The Great Debaters Contest is powered by Blaze, by Safaricom, the Youth Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Great Debaters Contest. We're in Machakos region and still on the SDGs. I'm your host, Austin Nyambok.
And I am Mariam Bishar. Tala girls versus Matungulu boys. Should improving urban living conditions be a priority in the 21st century? We'll have the debaters answer that question. First proposer, you have 3 minutes.
My name is Lum K. Rawian from the Great Matungulu Boys High School. And I'm here in order to propose the motion, improving urban living conditions should be the priority for the 21st century. Now, first, what is urban living condition? It is the circumstances or situation in which people live in cities or towns and the way they live. And what is priority? This is something that you think is more important than other things that you should deal with first. And what is 21st century? This is a period of 2000 to 2001 years. Now, why should we improve the urban living condition? You'll definitely realize that in most of the countries around the world, that majority of the people tend to go to live in cities or towns. This is simply because you find that in urban centers or cities, this is where you do find that there are good job opportunities for people. So people tend to go to cities or towns in order to look for job opportunities. And through this, you find that people tend to be overcrowded in the cities and towns. So, according to just the other day, the UN had a meeting in Nairobi, whereby there was the 26th session of the Governing Council, which took place from 8th to 12th May at the UN offices in Nairobi. The main agenda was the adoption of the new urban agenda on housing and sustainable urban development. To quote the statement by the President, Peter Thompson, the President of the UN General Assembly, said that cities are homes for the creative, innovative leaders in business, technology, and arts. Remember that cities govern and generate 80% of the gross domestic product, in which commonly known as GPD, and this shows the importance of improving urban living condition. In order for us to improve the living condition of people in urban centers, what are we supposed to do? We should first ensure that there is security for our residents who live in the cities and towns, because you find that now in urban centers, most of the towns do face a challenge when it comes to insecurity, because you find that we have youths and teenagers who really disturb people in our towns and cities too. Now, just the other day, the National Media Group also came with a document known as the Diary of a Gangster, whereby we saw how the Gaza group are really terrorizing people and the residents of Kayole and Nairobi at large. I was really shocked when I saw a kid of, let's say, 12 years and above also in the group. And I mean, this is such a disappointment to the community. So we should ensure that there's good security by, let's say, installing cameras and also educating the youth on the importance of security. Thank you.
Okay, Tala girls, you have 3 minutes for your introduction.
Before you walk, you must crawl. Only yesterday, humankind has been swept down by the fears of scourges such as smallpox, cholera, and TB, and malaria. Right now, thanks to sanitation, better living conditions, we are not more troubled about that. Right now, we have a hazard that we ourselves have created within ourselves. That hazard has evolved, which is the so-called urban centers. I'd like to strongly oppose the motion that says improving urban living conditions should be the first priority of the 21st century. How are we supposed to do that while there are so many things that we need to put into consideration? First and foremost, before improving urban living conditions, we should first embrace facts such as leadership. We should first invest in good leadership so that we can talk about improving urban living conditions. First and foremost, let's take in Kenya, the case of Bungoma. There was a certain case that went whereby wheelbarrows were going for 100,000. So, how are we going to say we are going to improve urban living conditions? How are we supposed to do that when we have poor leadership? Let's first look on our leadership. Let's invest in it so that we may start talking about improving urban living conditions. What is a priority? A priority is something that you put on top of your list before something else. So how are we supposed to prioritize improving the living conditions of the urban centers while we have poor leadership? How are we supposed to do that while we are importing in expatriates to build for us our railways, to do for us so many things, even teaching in our colleges? Let us embrace good leadership where every leader will be accountable for his or her own doing. They are able to account for how the money allocated for the parts of the country they are being used, so that we may talk about improving living conditions of the urban centers. Let us have good education. Let us have good health. That will only be brought by good leadership.
Rebuttals now. Matungulu boys, you have 3 minutes.
I'm Newton Muli, Matungulu Boys High School. So my friend stands in front of us, and she's trying to tell us that as a continent, as a nation, we are faced with pandemics such as smallpox, cholera, and sanitation. I want to enlighten you a bit. In the world that we are living in right now, more than half of the population is living in the urban centers, and this amount is expected to increase to a 66% by 2050. More than half of the population living in these urban centers, most of them are living in a state of poverty. And it is in these slums where we are faced with the problem of overpopulation, poor sanitation, diseases, and lack of water. Then somebody comes and says that by improving urban living conditions, we'll not be looking at the problem of sanitation, diseases. Yet it is these people, the majority that we are looking at, the majority living in the slums, are the people that we are actually considering. We find that, take for instance, the slums of Calcutta in India. Here, you find that most of the shelters there are made out of tents, cardboards, and wood. Most of them live in a room which does not exceed 12.5 square meters. And this, everybody will agree with me that this is not a conducive environment for somebody to bring up a family, but they have no option. Talking about leadership, it is we who choose our leaders. And then coming back home to our country, Kenya, we're in a time whereby we're faced with the challenge of electing our leaders. And most of you will agree with me that the leadership system in Kenya is governed by money. Because I'm poor, because the government has put me in a situation whereby I'll have to buy a kilogram of flour at 200 shillings, I'll have to vote for that politician who gives me money. So instead of looking more into leadership, why don't we look more into improving the living conditions of these people? That way we'll be ensuring that they have a good environment where they're living in, and hence they'll be a more productive lot. There's also the issue of food security. It is in these urban centers whereby we have nations like Israel, which is carrying out which is carrying out agriculture in their urban centers, and they are more food secure as compared to countries like Kenya, which are 60% arable, yet they have to import food for their people, swine food for that matter. Thank you.
Ladies, you have 3 minutes for your cross-examination.
Gloria Mumom from the Tala Girls High School, and I'm here to strongly oppose the motion that says improving urban living conditions should be given the first priority in the 21st century. Mr. Judge, when was the last time you ate ugali? When was the last time? Last month, probably. Why is that? The price of flour has risen up so much. Actually, flour is being considered a treasure. Do you know that in Nairobi, a sponsor is somebody who has the money to buy flour? per now, the living standards are okay. But let's take food crisis as a case today. Why don't we focus on rural areas where agriculture, the backbone of the country, is practiced? If this is done, we will curb food insecurity and save government expenditures on food imports. For example, imported maize from Mexico, which is being given to their horses, to their mules, and also to their cows. Is your life of the same worth as a cow? Is it? No. Secondly, corruption. Do you know that corruption is an economic activity in Kenya? St. Angela's girls, do you know that corruption is an economic activity in Kenya? Okay, that is why we are being rated as the second highest, I repeat again, the second highest corruption state in Africa. Not in East Africa, in Africa. So why don't we just first prioritize improving the standards in the urban areas, and then we can measure emerging issues to deal with. My friend talked about the 33% in the rural areas. Are they not people too? Are the people living in Mashinani not people too? They are people, isn't it? They are people like us living in the urban nations. So I'm strongly asking my fellow brothers to come, join us, to strongly oppose the motion so that we can then prioritize urban living standards. Gloria Mumo is my name. And confidence is a stain they can't wipe out.
Thank you very much to the audience. The proposers have been asked if they've thought of the consequences of prioritizing urban areas, for example, rural-urban migration and congestion. The opposition have been asked to validate their claim that corruption is an economic activity. We'll have them respond. Third proposer, you have 3 minutes.
The problem of congestion in the urban areas, we should not run from problems but find solutions from the problems. That's why in the case of housing, we have to build more houses which are cheap and to make the people in the slum to move from the slums to the houses. I want you to show me a person who gets a payslip from corruption. On to my first point. Water is a complicated resource to define. It is finite and therefore fixed amount of it is available in the planet. As you all know, water is life, and water rationing has been a major problem in the urban areas. Insufficient water may lead to lack of food as farmers require water to irrigate their plants in aquaponics and hydroponic farming. Water is needed to cool moving machines in industries found in the urban areas. Water should be availed in urban centers. Not only water, but clean water. We should come up with proper methods of storing rainwaters like the plastic tanks. And we should also sensitize the public on the importance of conservation of water. For instance, closing water taps after usage and repairing leaking pipes. And through this, urban areas will have sufficient water for domestic and industrial use. On to my second point, on education. You know knowledge is power, and education is the key to success. Education system should be improved in the urban areas because occupied minds in education can never involve themselves in joining the malicious groups like the Gaza in Kayole and Boko Haram in Nigeria. With education, people will grow to entrepreneurs, which may lead to growth of business in urban areas and therefore will promote the economics of a certain country. When there is education, people will have more jobs and innovation will take place. For instance, through knowledge of IT, there will be innovation which will create jobs. In this case, Science Congress enable people to come up with projects which provide jobs. For like example, Bill Gates came up with Microsoft while in high school. We should ensure more schools, learning institutions with good equipment, equipped teachers, all necessary learning materials, and fully equipped lab for practicals. On the side of finding in the agriculture, living green by urban ecosystems. Examples of products grown are the lettuce, e.g. in Israel. Urban farming can be done in growing and processing food in urban areas, therefore finding for our country's revenue.
Opposers, you have 3 minutes to respond to the audience.
To the Speaker and the House at large, I'm Lilian Bonareri from Tala Girls High School. I'm opposing the motion that says improving living standards in urban centers should be the first priority in the 21st century. I'll begin by answering the question which was raised by the audience. I would like to bring to your knowledge that corruption is indeed an economic activity. For instance, the NYS issue which we had just recently, whereby we had a lot of money being swindled by the political leaders. If we first focus on fighting corruption, we could go far, then we could deal later with the living standards. I hope you're answered. On to my first point, I think that I strongly recommend that expatriates should be eradicated in our countries before first dealing with improving the living standards. Because once we have done that, we're going to put up training institutions where we're going to train our own people, then we'll tax them, then the money will go back to the government. Let's take an instance of countries like the Eastern Emirates. They only give odd jobs to Kenyans because they don't want to spend a lot of their money in countries like us. But here in Kenya, what do? We have the Chinese constructing the roads, and then we end up suffering because they won't invest in our countries. On my second point, I think that security is a major issue in our country. We should first do with it before thinking about the sanitation things and other things. What is the impact of living like a king when I know everything that I've worked for is going to go down the drain? Why should I have good living standards and later on my money will be taken, everything that I've built over the years? I think they should first deal with things like security so that while we do things, they can be accounted for. For example, the government over the years has been trying to improve slums like the Kibra renovation which took place a few years ago. What happened? We still have crime taking place. They didn't even consider improving the security conditions. We have the attacks which left many dead. Like I was a victim. I lost 5 of my very own friends to that terror attack. And right now, they can come and tell me about living conditions. That is a no. I won't stand here and let them do that. So kindly, boys, join us. We'll be waiting for you so that we can still support. You can support us. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll hear final statements now. Gentlemen, you have 1 minute.
Let us not blame our leaders for the kind of living conditions that we are in. We have to be the change we want to see. For that reason, I want to urge us that it is up to us, once the government has made its efforts to improve our living conditions, to make sure that we are food secure, to put an effort. Take, for instance, a country like Israel. 92% of these people are living in urban areas. Most of them are carrying out their agricultural activities in their skyscrapers, on rooftops. They are food secure as compared to a country like us, which is 60% arable. Yet, we complain, we stand here and complain of food security. They are also able to protect themselves by living as one, by having brotherhood, whereby such militia groups have no room in such a society. As you talk about improving urban living conditions, I want you to know that it is up to us to take it into our own hands to better our living conditions. Thank you.
Ladies, you also have 1 minute.
Tristan Aboya from Tala Girls. I want to say this. Someone talked about cities being homes for great leaders. So I'm asking you this question again. Are the leaders we're having in the rural centers not leaders enough? And then to the first proposer, he said that he supported us. He said that we should first improve on security. So you know well that improving the urban living conditions should not be the first priority of the 21st century. We are living in the 21st century. So there are so many things we need to put into consideration. You talked about great leaders being in the urban centers. You talked about improving security first, which supports us. Let's not lie to ourselves that by improving the urban living conditions, we have solved our problems. There are so many things we need to put into consideration. Thank you.
Matungulu boys, good use of language to Larawi, Newton Muli. There is something I take issue with on you. Calcutta slums. You mentioned something about Calcutta slums in India, but there is no evidence, according to what you said. Again, if you improve on your fluency, then you will realize 3 minutes is enough time. But the bell was ringing, but because you are speaking very slowly, then you find yourself being time bad. So check on your fluency. Samuel Ngui, question well answered, but add some life to the motion. Give it some more passion for it to become a job well done. Thank you to the good work to the two teams.
Then Tala girls, the opposers, Triza, you ended your argument so casually. In future, improve on it. When you're going towards the end, conclude in a better way. Don't just stop immediately. Otherwise, your presentation was good. Gloria, that was good. But then there's an example that you gave about Kenya being the highest corrupt country in Africa. So you're supposed to quote the source, where you got that from. But otherwise, you're a good speaker. Then Lillian, you're a powerful speaker, and you can work well. Maybe try to even think of being speaker number 1, because you had very good speaking skills, but unfortunately, it did not come out because most of the time you're answering questions. So in future, we would want to see you talk even. Thank you.
Numbers now. Begin with Matungulu boys. The judges awarded you 65%. Kindly give them a round of applause. Your opponents, Tala girls, the judges awarded you 67%, making you the winners of this debate.
Very well. Congratulations to the two teams on stage. We'd like to thank you, our studio audience, and our viewers back home. Keep the conversation going at Great Debaters EA. Big shout out to our sponsors, Safaricom Blaze. I've been your host, Austin Nyambok.
And I am Mariam Bishar. We'll see you next time.
The Great Debaters Contest is powered by Blaze, by Safaricom, the Youth Network.